really excited to be able to tell you about this project today. It's been going on for about 3 years, so it's become a bit of a labour of love. But actually it's been great to be involved in, it's been fun to be involved in, and this is reality. It's taken all of us to do this. So I think between us this is going to be quite an informal session. You can ask questions as we're going on or ask questions at the end. But this is the endoscopy challenge. So the slide, people can introduce themselves as we go through. I'm Zoe Hilton, I'm the Innovation Programme Manager for Cardiff and Vale, and I've been managing this challenge from a Cardiff and Vale perspective for the last couple of years. In fact, it just started before I took this job, so I picked up soon after I started. So a little bit of background. In 2022, as we came out at the end of the pandemic, there was 30,000 patients waiting for endoscopy in Wales, which is huge. We'd really struggled to get people through the service through the pandemic due to obvious reasons, and that had resulted in a huge backlog. And it was recognised as one of the burning platforms in Wales that we really needed to get our teeth into and to do things differently. So Cardiff and Vale had conversations with the Cardiff Capital Region, and we were looking at ways that we could innovate. And rather than using the same resources we've got slightly differently, we wanted to do something different. We wanted to use innovation and to change the way we do things. You know, our staff were burnt out, we weren't getting people through the hospital door. The anxiety in the environment is going up because people are waiting longer, getting delayed diagnosis, and so everything was going in the wrong direction. So this came in a really timely place. So I'm going to hand over to the team really. I'll chair today and ask questions if you guys don't have questions, but I'm going to hand over to the team really to tell the story about it, because it's been fun, it's been a huge learning curve, but it's taken all of us and a variety of stakeholders to get this over the line and to make it successful. And I think that's probably what this story needs to tell. We can't do these things on our own. It takes a lot of people to come together and work together to recognise what skills you've got, what skills you haven't got, and to pull friends, make relationships to make this work. So the first thing we needed to do, as with so many of these things, is find planning. So I'm going to introduce Owen, who can tell you a little bit more about his position in that. Owen.
I'll be the man with the money for this conversation. Yeah, certainly can. Good morning, everyone. I work for Cardiff Capital Region, which is a representative body of the 10 local authorities in South East Wales. We are focused on good, clean economic growth and also making a societal benefit with that. In terms of Zoe's point with the money, just to kind of explain, what we did was we set £10 million aside for a local wealth building challenge fund, and that was a way for us to fundamentally change what is quite a traditional approach to some of these, significant societal challenges that are facing people in our communities, in our families. And we wanted to do that by experimentation and with an understanding that we didn't know the answers at the outset. And I think that was a very clear point that Cardiff and Vale Health Board came to us with. An understanding of the problem, a strong data set, but not necessarily key kind of performance indicators or metrics to go with that. But as an organisation, we felt that investing in a challenge-led approach through a local wealth building fund would give us the opportunity to invest in areas that really needed it. And I think Zoe mentioned that burning platform earlier. And I wonder how many of you have the opportunity actually to be genuinely proactive with some of the problems that keep you up at night in services which are highly reactive, aren't they, under monumental pressure. So my role with Cardiff Capital Region is a beautiful one. I get the opportunity to find public sector and societal problems and then create environments, interventions and programs to make a difference on them. So my role is all about the interaction, which you will see here with a huge amount of pride, I must say, that intersection between innovators and problem owners. The other good thing with the Challenge Fund for us is we get measured by the Treasury on jobs, GVA, leverage, all of those quite hard economic factors. But as a community development hippie myself, there is just something in that feeling that you get when you change people's lives. And I think that's what the team will articulate today. So we built the Challenge Fund alongside its sister program, which is called Infuse, or Innovative Future Services, to build the skills, capacity and confidence in innovation. And that is a key point that I just want to stop on for a minute. Across public service, we have a productivity challenge. We have monumental issues that we're facing that are wicked and have been long-term. All of those pressures that come with public spending cuts. What we want to do is, through innovation opportunities like the Challenge Fund, is give public servants a real-world opportunity to feel, to touch, to be part of innovation, because ultimately our aim is that we have greater capacity and then even more fantastic things than this example happen in the future, because we've had those normative loops of innovating as part of our work. Innovation for me is a disciplined process, but it's built on relationships, and that is the strength of this particular challenge. I think later on we could talk about the specifics maybe of this, but to cap off my input, it would be a summary. We have a strategic priority across our region to redefine the public sector as a driver of innovation, as an opportunity to create and stimulate markets. And we do that through some of our investment funds, of which I can share links to. The Challenge Fund for us has been successful. There has been failure within it, but the endoscopy challenge specifically has the opportunity to change lives across Wales and to benefit, a business that has a solution that can potentially have a significant economic benefit in our region. So that's it from me. I will pass across.
Thank you. Can we show slides? Oh, there we are. We have. So I'll move on to Sam. A lot of the issues that we have around innovation and bringing innovation into the NHS is often around procurement. And this has been a really close relationship with procurement right from the start, which is why I think it's been so successful, because we've had a relationship. It's not just a transactional relationship, it's a relationship that we've built, we've grown, we've developed. So Sam, I think your part of this is really important.
Thank you all. My name is Sam Salisbury. I'm a procurement business manager for Carpenville and MediWales SP. So, like Zoe said, we started this about 2 years ago. So I'd just like to start with innovation in procurement. And through my experience, innovation in procurement the past 5 years hasn't really took off, hasn't really got anywhere. The NHS is funded by the government. We all know the NHS has strict financial sort of budgets, and innovation is only funded through generous funding like the CCR. To get funding in the NHS, it's quite difficult. I think I find myself every week being contacted by clinical end users, departments and specialities, and they basically go, we would like to get this in, and my response is pretty much, have you got funding? And they go, no. And that's the difficult part. So generous investment through funds like the CCR is the way this market should go. I'd like to just start with a very simple question. What is innovation procurement? We all know that it's looking at new solutions, processes, and products that can develop, support, and drive positive outcomes within the organisation. I think the key part of this project, and projects alike going forwards, is all about partnership and collaboration. This project would never occurred without partnership and collaboration between public and private sector. The economic climate at the moment is only getting worse, and we need to look at bridging that gap between public and private sector. So if we don't bridge that gap, the public sector is going to continue to just face their own budget controls. So we need to really focus on bridging that gap in the competitive market. As we've said, this funding has been paramount to this project. The NHS wouldn't have funded this project. You ask the NHS executive team for 750k, they're going to turn around and say, no, you don't have any clinical backing, you don't have any information about it, there's no chance they can get this through. That fund can be spent on sort of projects we already know the outcomes for. So this sort of leads on to traditional versus a modern approach. So essentially the PCR regs, which is Public Contracts Regulations Act in 2015, they were our original regs that we've been following for the past 8 years, 9 years. And the UK government recognised that those regulations were quite strict and frigid to allow innovation in the public sector. So what they did in 2023 was brought out the Procurement Act 2023, which came into force in February 2025. Why that's important is because it changed the procurement process. We did start this project on the old regulations, and the procurement route we used was the IPP, which essentially means the Innovative Procurement Partnership. Yes, we were quite flexible, but we were quite lucky. And that is one project that's managed to get through out of who knows how many that haven't been successful in the past. If you think of a normal tender process that many of you may have been involved in, you have a requirement in your area, you have your specification that you've wrote, and then you go to procurement and say, right, we'd like to do this. We put a tender out, and then a supplier is either successful or unsuccessful. And that cuts the project off if they're unsuccessful. And that's the traditional way. What I'm saying is on a more modern sense, and with the new regs, what we can do is something called a competitive flexible procedure. What that is it's basically in the term, isn't it? It's a more competitive, but we're allowed to be flexible, which is the key part of this. So instead of just having a specification and a requirement, a bid, and thank you very much, you're successful or you're unsuccessful, we're actually allowed to go back out to the suppliers, back out to that private industry and really challenge them on their processes, to really look at, in this project, the end goal is to reduce endoscopy wait times through a new, innovative, environmentally sustainable solution from a supplier based in Wales. We wouldn't have been able to do that if, in the normal process, IQ Endoscopes, they managed to get through the whole process. But if we did that in a traditional sense, IQ Endoscopes wouldn't have got past the first stage. We asked the questions around sustainability, and that's really key because of the project scope. If we went on the original traditional routes, IQ Endoscopes wouldn't have got to where they were, and we wouldn't be standing here today. So the more modern route is where we think, as an innovation industry, needs to be going down. And you look at that, you ask your procurement colleagues in your area, I'm sure they're aware of the new Procurement Act. Don't ask me on much of the legislation. It's only just come in, so we're all learning it. And that sort of leads me back onto the final point about strategic sourcing. And it sort of builds into all three of them. So how can we be more strategic going forwards? This project's 2.5 years. A normal tender process may take 30 to 60, 90 days, 120 if it's certain circumstances. So how can we be more strategic and drive that growth and develop those new markets for our private sector organisations? On the top right, I've just got some perceived barriers, so I'm not sure how many people in this room have had their sort of run-ins with procurement, but what I've got a question at the back.
No, I did have that running with procurement. I will be running afterwards.
No, I totally understand. And in my own experience, I sometimes get an email and you can see that the trail is 30, 40 emails long, and it started maybe June last year. And as a procurement team, we are here to support you as much as we can. I know we are under strict regulations, we are spending public money, so we have our own compliance and governance, but that's not for you to worry about. We're here to support you as much as we can. I'll truthfully say in this room that sometimes you have to bend the rules to try and get the outcome for the patient. I've always got that question at the back of my head is, how does this affect the patient? And if there's a small procurement rule that we can try and find a loophole for you, we will do that. That we are here to support. And that's where I come on to what you were saying about your perceived barriers, is that there's lack of flexibility, there's obstacle blockers. But if you include us from an early point on, we can support you, and we can support you as much as we can. And that's how this project, from a compliance side and the governance side, yes, the CCR 750k is great, but we can't spend it without spending it compliantly. So that's the most important part there, is getting us engaged and involved straight away. Just move on to the next slide. So I've sort of split this project up into the 4 Ds of innovation. So we've got discover, define, develop, and deliver. Like I said, in a normal process, remember we have the requirement, bid, and then the successful, unsuccessful. As you can see here, it sort of links back into my previous slide around the partnership and collaboration. So at the start of the project, we had the money, but who's out there? How do we know who's out there? In a normal procurement process, in the traditional sense, we maybe put some notices up with some government websites. The clinical teams may have some information, some links with some external companies in the industry, but that may only produce 20, 30 suppliers. With private sector engagement and support, we managed to identify over 150 potential suppliers, and that narrowed it down to about 13 who had that not market-ready product. From there, we managed to take the 2 suppliers through, which is Kahan and IQ Endoscopes, and if you're unaware of the project, they're 2 very different ideas. One's a product, one's a pinprick of blood, and it goes into a computer for AI, and it can test risk of cancer. I'm not clinical, so don't quote me on all that. Anyway, so we move on to the define section. As you can see here, we've got September 2022 is that first phase, and September 2023. So that's a year gap between concept and product development. That's key because, like I said on the previous slide, you have to be more modern, you have to be more flexible, and allow the industry to accommodate their own sort of processes to develop something into something the NHS can adopt. Whereas the normal process is we pay you some money and then you just deliver the product and we hope the best it works. And that's sort of how it goes on a sort of baseline, straight line sense. I've noted here those supplier dialogue days and evaluation which are split. So through this year period, IQ Endoscopes and Kahan kept coming back into the health board, and we've had these sort of multidisciplinary sort of teams together where, in a normal sense we'd have, if you had a traditional, you'd have procurement, finance, the clinical team, and the private sector company. In the modern sense, we have these dialogue days which allows us to bring in those extra teams. So those 4 originals, then you have sustainability teams, you have health economics teams, you have other private sector sort of consultancy that can help support you with this. And then we lead on to the final stage, which is deliver, which is probably the most exciting part of this project. I think 2 years ago when we started this, we never believed that it was, I thought, oh gosh, this is going to be something quite long, and it's not, never say never, but to get where we are has been brilliant, and that's only been through CCR funding to reduce endoscopy wait times. So I'd just like to pass on to Owen, who's going to, Tom, who's going to talk to you a bit more about the IQ side.
Shall I start?
Go for it.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam. It's great. Hi, afternoon. Is it afternoon now, everyone? I'm Tom. I'm one of the directors at IQ Endoscopes. Really interesting what Sam said already around that. What I learned this morning was it was very close to us not being selected around the sustainability effort. And I think as part of the programme, talk about flexibility and innovation, we all managed right at the very beginning to work out a sort of plan that would capture the needs and the problems of what they were looking for, but also to address some of those risks that they saw on IQ Endoscopes at the very beginning. And I'll come talk about that in a little bit. One other thing I want to mention, Luella Trickett's conversation earlier around investing in health tech, not being seen as a cost, and the fact that we've been able to invest in projects like this to really understand the problems that the NHS and health boards, I guess, come in existence every day of their lives, has been fundamental to sort of shaping our offering, shaping everyone's understanding the project to be able to sort of drive positive outcomes going forward. So I think that really links into this project really nicely. So IQ Endoscopes, we have a vision that no one is waiting unnecessarily for life-changing diagnosis. We're on a mission to drive a rapid access diagnosis through our sterile single-use endoscope, which is built, designed in Great Britain. We should be proud of that. And designed to help more clinicians treat more patients and add capacity in a sustainable way into the healthcare system. Some of our core values: we want it to be affordable, we want it to be easy to use so clinicians can pick up a product and use it in various clinical settings to add capacity and in a more sustainable way. I'm very pleased to announce after sort of 5 years of development, we are now on the cusp of or using our product on our first patients next week. So effectively being commercial after sort of many years of money and time going through that sort of R&D phase. And the project that everyone's pulled together here has been really fundamental of getting us to this stage. So this is what it looks like. We've got a reusable base unit and the scope that plugs into the base unit, powers it, uses the suction, water, and powers the main sort of HD camera at the end of the flexible scope, so you can see inside you. It would be used for and lower sort of indications. I'm sure Jenny can talk a little bit more about that from her clinical expertise. One thing we're really passionate about is sustainable healthcare, and we summarise it by this equation. Put simply, I see it as sustainable value is outcomes over costs. So if your outcomes are improving, your costs are coming down, then you've got a sustainable healthcare solution that's benefiting all sort of areas. One thing that's been key to this project has been able to understand all these different areas and quantify these things. We thought we had a good product. It was set up by a clinical endoscopist who saw some of the problems of the current reusable systems. You have to wash them in between use. There's challenges in terms of decontamination, scopes coming back that are broken and things. So we thought that having a single-use alternative that is sustainable on the shelf will add capacity and help his clinic. It's very hard to sort of sell that without data. To Sam's point earlier, that it's single use. It can have a negative impact if you're just introducing that, and without that data to support why we think it's sustainable, it can lead to those challenges and misconceptions of what we're offering. So as part of the project, we've looked at how our scope or single-use endoscopy would affect the current clinical pathway, how it could sort of move the pathway across the system to make it more efficient, to look at the healthcare economics, and to also look at the sustainable impact, environmental impact of introducing that technology into the system. And some of the things that have come out of it, patient outcomes, we've shown that it can benefit in Cardiff. 2,000 plus patients in Cardiff could benefit from this technology, increasing capacity on the current processes by 25%. So it would mean the system can treat more patients, reduce backlogs, improve waiting lists, which is a fundamental problem of the project was there to address. In terms of financial impact, so some of the data, and Michael's in the room here from CEDA, a huge sort of credit to the team there pulling all this data together and mapping out the solutions. And the last piece that we're sort of looking for at the end of this sort of period is to really sort of look at the healthcare economic factor as well. That's the one piece we've got to unlock. We believe, with the capacity savings, it will also, drive costs long term into the healthcare system. I think one of the big things that really come out of this project, one of our barriers to entry, is around our environmental impact. And working with Richard Hall, which I'll introduce shortly, on the project, his team there, and working with CEDA and Jenny on the ground, has shown that we can deliver 34% reduction in carbon saving by introducing this technology versus the current technology. So And that's a huge sort of data point for us that we can now go to market without sort of knocking off that barrier to entry. So yeah, I'll introduce Richard as following on from that. Richard's the CEO at PDM and been fundamental to finding out this project. So Richard, over to you, and maybe talk about the project itself and how does sustainable design really sort of drive these projects going forward.
Great, thank you very much. Yes, my name is Richard Hall, founder and CEO of PDM. And PDM is a design, innovation and sustainability consultancy. We've been around 20 years and in sustainability for about 12, so this is not a new thing for us. We're very pleased that the market's kind of caught up with us. I think in terms of sustainability, I think there's some misconceptions about what it actually is. I think people see it as a much like a problem case. So if you think about recessions, they are transient. If you think about MDD to MDR, it's kind of transient. COVID was transient, so a lot of people perceive that sustainability is also a thing that people have got to deal with. It's a cost, it's a pain in the backside, it's not something that people want to engage with. However, this is a gold example of how you can actually be sustainable and reduce costs. So the NHS created its 2045 net zero mandate, which is telling you what you need to do in terms of decarbonisation through scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3. What it doesn't tell you is how you actually do it. And what we do as an organisation is work with companies like IQ Endoscopes about how you actually do it. The reality is that sustainability is locked in, 80% of sustainability is locked in at the design stage. And that's a known fact. So if you adopt sustainability towards the end of a product or a service, you're going to be in a very difficult situation. So this is an example of how IQ, through their vision and mission, and through collaborative partnerships, have realised the value of sustainability from the very, very outset. So things we've been involved with on this particular project is looking at a macro level in terms of the actual product design, but also in terms of the patient care pathway. So you probably ask a question, this is a single-use disposable medical device, right? So how can it be sustainable? So that's kind of a contradiction in terms. The answer to that is this is a very complex debate. Sustainability is not about going from single-use to reusable. It's not a switch that you flip. It's far, far more complex than that. And it's really all about, in the case of the IQ endoscopes, how it holistically addresses the carbon impact. So what we've been doing with IQ is to understand what that actually looks like. So working with CEDA as part of the team, understanding what that data, interpreting the data, what it actually means in terms of the carbon impact as one of the metrics. I think the reality is that it's something that people have got to kind of get their heads around in terms of what sustainability actually is. I'll let you into a little secret, but I don't want to tell anybody else. But if I tell you that, if I talk to you about sustainability, you think of it's about being green and eco, and you kind of go down a certain pathway. But if I talk to you about sustainability, it's being a very thin veil over operational efficiency. So looking at reducing carbon to reduce cost, that's got a huge impact in terms of cost. And this is where people need to kind of change their thinking and their mindset. It's all about reducing carbon, and every carbon impact in terms of materials, modularity, supply chain has got a cost associated with it. So if you think in terms of that, what I'm trying to explain is that you can be sustainable and reduce cost, increase profitability, and address patient care pathway. And that's this is a really good example of how organisations can actually adopt that.
Very good. Thanks, Richard. Great. So yeah, kind of rounding off this, as part of the whole project, we've been able to sort of really quantify these things, and we've got a compelling argument around the patient, in fact, the provider, and also the planet. So we're really sort of proud and thankful for the work that's come out of this sort of process. To touch on, I think everyone's got his points, and guys, please jump in terms of why this project has been a success. I think it's through collaboration across different sectors. I think we've all shared the same mindset and the same vision. It's been a really fun project, and as Sam said, I think it's one of a kind. Certainly, I've not seen it before. Where everyone's got got together this sort of shared sort of vision to pull something together and work across teams, different sort of hours, different places, to come up with something that's really sort of beneficial to all organisations. I think the key to that was trying to understand everyone's problems as well. We've all come at it from different angles, from a clinical setting, from a commercial setting, from procurement, from healthcare economics sort of settings, and we'll have different goals as part of it, and everyone's understood what everyone else is trying to get to it, and really sort of worked and collaborated well to it. One of the key things is having access to staff and stakeholders. I think something that's really unlocked the project is having the ability to bring Jenny, whose clinical experience is second to none in terms of the project, who's been a foot soldier on the ground to sort of corral and get all the sort of clinicians on board of this, and to uncover all the data within the programme as well, has been unbelievable. And the fact that the funding has unlocked that access has enabled the whole project to take place. And other stakeholders that we mentioned, CEDA and PDM and procurement, being able to sort of access that staff at this level before we go to market, and for us to be able to learn from all those has really helped shape our sort of commercial strategy. Leading on to those organisation benefits has really helped to shape that proposition, that clinical exposure. We've had Jenny in the office talking about various sort of clinical things, and everyone was just captivated by what she had to say, and I think we all learned a huge amount in terms of that. And it also then shaped our sort of innovation in terms of next product, being able to take, we originally were going to release just a sort of upper gastroscope, but all the evidence was suggesting that using a sort of flexi sigmoidoscopy for lower indications would be really beneficial. So it helped shape our sort of product development strategy around that as well. And again, that sort of commercial story to go to market, to drop those sort of barriers to entry around it all has been great. Wider benefits, so kind of what's next as part of the project then is we've uncovered all these things, but we've then got to put it into the real world and really sort of capture all those benefits and put it into real world practice. And we've already started doing that. As part of this programme, it's led on to we'll be doing a 200 patient proper clinical study for
service evaluation,
which is a commercial opportunity for IQ Endoscopes. Again, more ability to sort of learn going forward. Jen can talk a little bit more about that. And then there's also the sort of wider Wales outreach that comes from being able to sort of showcase the data, being able to tell our story across the Wales health board. So really great project, and thanks to all involved. So now I will pass on to Jenny, which is she will captivate you with what's really going on.
Thank you, Don. So my name's Jenny. I'm a surgical registrar in Cardiff and Vale Health Board. So I've been working with CEDA along with the rest of the team under the project. And one of the things that we really wanted to understand is what patients think of the process now, because we're talking about this challenge, but the main goal is to improve things for patients. So CEDA and I, as well as the patient experience team, did a experience survey for patients on the waiting list for a flexible sigmoidoscopy. And there's about 1,000 patients plus on the waiting list that we sent this survey out. And I'll give you a moment just to read some of these quotes that we got. These quotes are pretty powerful. This basically tells us that what we're doing at the moment is not working. What we're doing is not helping our patients. They have more pain, they have more anxiety, and so something needs to change. Currently, the process that patients go through is that they are seen by their GP, they're referred to the clinic, that could be the surgical clinic, that could be the medical, so gastroenterology clinic, to be seen by a clinician. That wait can be several months, sometimes years. They're seen by a clinician and then they're referred on for an endoscopy, flexible sigmoidoscopy. And again, that wait can be years. When they have the flexible sigmoidoscopy, that's normally in the endoscopy suite with a reusable scope. the patient gets a diagnosis, that doesn't necessarily mean that they get a treatment. They then wait further to be seen in clinic to get a treatment. That process is very long. So I wanted to touch on why I think this project has been so successful, and I know that kind of everyone has talked about that so far, but I think the difficulty from a clinician point of view is that a lot of the time industry come up with an idea and they bring it to the NHS. And actually, without knowing some of those little things that happen in the NHS, it's really difficult for it to be adopted. And so I think being able to talk with IQ, to talk with Sam from Procurement, getting us all involved from the very beginning, has meant that we've been able to shape this to the outcomes that hopefully will come from this. As kind of IQ, as Tom said, from an IQ perspective, it was very much a gastroscope, and actually through this process, it's changed. So the outcomes from this, as I said, the current process is failing, and part of the work that I did with CEDA was actually tracking patients and their journeys. So this is an actual patient. So this patient was referred by the GP for rectal bleeding in March 2021, and they waited over a year to be seen in clinic to be referred for a flexible sigmoidoscopy. They then waited kind of over 6 months to have their flexible sigmoidoscopy where they got their diagnosis. Were seen pretty quickly in the clinic, but they still haven't had their treatment. They're referred on to surgery, which again is a further wait. So the main output from this is, as Tom said, setting up a one-stop shop clinic. So our idea is that there is a clinic that GPs can refer their patients to. Patients are seen, they have a single-use IQ endoscopy in the clinic, they get their diagnosis and they get their treatment plan all at the same time. That means there's no more waiting, there's no more worsening symptoms, there's no more anxiety. Also, what that means is that those patients that would normally be going through the endoscopy unit, we free that space up. So that's what's helping this endoscopy waiting time. We're taking patients away from the endoscopy unit, being seen in different clinics, helping those patients, but also helping others through the other means. This wouldn't be possible with a reusable scope. The problem with decontamination, there's only a number of reusable scopes that we have. The feasibility of moving it from the endoscopy suite to a clinic, that's not possible. But with single-use IQ endoscopes, this is possible. And hopefully this will be the start of many one-stop shop clinics that can come. Yeah. That's checkpoint.
So I think that's it. I mean, that's the essence of what this challenge is about. The whole mission approach has been brilliant because we've been able to try and find a solution to one of our biggest problems. But I think for me, the biggest benefit from this is the stakeholders. It's having all the stakeholders in right from the beginning to work together. You don't know what you don't know, and we mustn't make assumptions about other people's areas. I don't want to make assumptions about what's going to work in endoscopy. I haven't worked there for 6 years. So having everybody's voice, and actually it's been fun because we've built a relationship that it's been fun. We enjoy getting together, and then it doesn't feel like a burden. It feels like something enjoyable and that something's going to have a good outcome for our patient population. It's hard work because we're a team that are committed to delivering this, and we can see the benefits, but there's a lot of other people out there that will immediately say no. And actually, it's probably come across, but when we went through the first dialogue day and IQ came and talked about their disposable scope, I think 70% of the people of the panel on that day just said, no, we're not going back to using disposable technology, we're not doing it. And so it's come a hell of a long way to turn it around. Sam talked to that we were surprised that we've got this far. But actually, if you bring the right stakeholders in right from the beginning that answer the questions and do the research, and CEDA simply do, there's so many people that we have to thank for this being so successful. But the overlying message to me is that collaboration is the most important thing to make innovation work. And so the floor's open if there's questions. Yes, there is.
I've got loads of questions. I'm a medical microbiologist, and I accept this is potentially a game changer. I'm really fascinated by it. But you're saying the first patient is next week. Jenny, have you looked down this thing yet?
Yes.
And in what sense have you looked down it? I mean, have you done an endoscopy on animals, or have you done some endoscopies on individual people?
So from my perspective, when I was first kind of part of this challenge, I went to IQ and saw the scope for the first time, because it's very difficult to kind of champion something if you have never seen it or never felt it. And also as part of this challenge, the main thing that we wanted to do is to get clinicians to hold the scope and to use it. Not in humans, so in models, but without clinicians saying, this is good, we like it, it's very difficult to go very far. So that's one of the first things that we did. And I think also what helps is having somebody on the ground to be able to gather everybody. It helped a lot, because I think if you had kind of done it on your own, maybe you wouldn't have had so many people come. So that was one of the first things that we did. But clinicians have tried it in animals, just not myself.
Yeah, excellent. Because clearly, I mean, the biggest issue is going to be reusable scopes, and I'm so pleased that that CEDA and yourselves have got together to do that evaluation, because we're constantly from a decontamination processing point of view, both the endoscopy world and the HSDU world, being thrown this. We've got to go back to reusables when so many of the single-use elements that we use have been well worked through, and it's the biggest challenge ever. So the more that companies like collaborators like this go on, the better. And of course, if this technology works in a sigmoid scope, then those more sterile sites, so the bronchoscopy comes to mind, because we're constantly having to worry about these mycobacteria that are then seen then on histology slides, etc. So, opening it up to all the other orifices becomes the most important thing ever.
That's another real positive project. One of the things we also have to overcome as part of the project was we're not trying to replace reusables. They've been around and they've remained pieces of kit.
But the problems of biofilm down those endoscopes is just misunderstood. I mean, it's horrendous, and we are actually putting patients at risk. But it's a risk-based process that we go through. So we take this risk every single day. Or clinicians say, I don't, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. So I think as well as optimising the sort of patient pathway and trying to sort of add capacity by I guess adding another option to that reusable and being able to take it to different areas of the hospital, you quite right. That's where we want compromised patients with our sterile scope would be hugely beneficial. Yeah.
So, I'm the Cancer Recovery Programme for the NHS Executive. I have a question with regards to you're going to trial 200 patients, did you say? Are you going to do that in that one-stop clinic setting, or are you just going to trial it in the normal setting as is? That's my first question.
So the plan is to do a service evaluation in a couple of settings. So the main one is the rectal bleeding clinic, so one-stop shop clinic. The other places that we found that it might be beneficial is in theatres, so patients that have a bit of their bowel removed and then joined together. There's evidence to say that it's quite good to do a camera to have a look at that joint. At the moment, it's not really possible because of reusable scopes. There's just not the capacity. But that's definitely somewhere that we'll try some of these scopes. Also, emergency patients, so patients that come in for a number of reasons. Rectal bleeding might be one of them. A lot of the time they wait, so they'll come in the morning and they might wait 2 days to have a scope. just because of the capacity problems in endoscopy. So if you had single-use endoscopy that you could just take to the patient, theoretically you might be able to shorten their length of stay. So that's another place that we can use them.
So those areas were part of the second phase of the work that CEDA did and we did to work out where it was beneficial. So they haven't just been plucked out of the air, they're evidence that this could have had an impact to these areas.
And then my follow-up question is, have they shown interest in then, presuming the evaluation is successful, then taking on the use of them afterwards?
Yeah, in terms of procurement, Sam?
Yeah, so we're at that final stage now where we're going to the exact level. So the only way we're going to really get this changing after the service evaluation is through exact approval, and that's what we're aiming to do. So with the support of CEDA, all the sort of health economic metrics, I think the other key part of it is the saving. And as soon as we get that saving benefit realised, I think it'll be massive to get through the exact. We're constantly, you may know, may have had your experience in exact before, it's something you've just got to keep nitpicking and keep introducing into it. Otherwise it'll fall to the back, and then you come back in 6 months and then they'll go, what's this about? And you find yourself doing something. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just throwing all the questions there.
Maybe just add some context to that as well. I think we've registered all this great data at the moment, and when we start doing these evaluations, I think the relationship's got to continue. I think from us, from IQ Endoscopes, we're kind of creating a new market. There's been a big player that's into the market before us, and probably learnings from that. They've sort of maybe handed out sort of scopes and said try these where appropriate. I think what we have to do now is work with all those stakeholders to really showcase the value in use and the value proposition of that. So we're coming to market with a different sort of proposition to really sort of show what are those clinical benefits, what are the sustainable benefits, what are the healthcare economic benefits. So keep working with those partnerships to really sort of quantify the benefit of introducing this next technology. I think without doing that, we'll come across barriers as we go. So that's our sort of game plan to it. I think that'll be welcome to keep.
I have got another one, but
Somebody else.
You mentioned community settings in one of the slides. So what does that look like? What environment? Are we talking as innovative as patient homes, or just hubs, or primary IGP
to be
surgeries?
sort of worked out, I guess.
Yeah.
The beauty of what we're doing, we're decoupling the sort of endoscope from the decontamination, so we're able to, I guess, plug and play the endoscope in various clinical settings. One of those settings is potentially community. You could do like a blood truck, for example, an endoscopy truck. You could take it into sort of various community settings. I think one of the things Jenny was talking about, it depends on sedation levels as well. And there's a whole area around that to sort of prepare the patient to enable that to happen. But something we are looking at really keen.
I think that's one of the good things that CEDA and I have been mapping these patients' journeys, so we know exactly how many patients have sedation. And actually it's very few for lower endoscopy, much higher for upper endoscopy. So I think lower endoscopy, definitely in clinic settings, maybe there was the bowel bus a few years ago, which was like a flexible sigmoidoscopy on the bus. Those things are possible because the patients don't need sedation as much, and we can prove that we've looked at 6 months worth of flexible sigmoidoscopies and hardly any have sedation.
That touched a little bit on my second question, which is around the threshold for the criteria for patients that this would be suitable for. So obviously level of sedation requires one of them. Are there other things that you've had to consider around complexities where this could be used versus not used?
Yeah, definitely. So in the sense of we've looked at all of these different settings. For a lower endoscopy, so the majority of patients, at least in Cardiff and Vale, have a phosphate enema, which theoretically can be given in a clinic setting. Patients could even have it at home before they came in, and very little has sedation. for upper endoscopy, there are a proportion of patients that don't have sedation, but more so they do, and that's why uppers there might be a smaller capacity for doing them outside of the endoscopy unit, just because if someone has sedation and they need recovery, they can't drive afterwards, those sorts of things, and so that doesn't lead as well to a clinic. But if you pick the right patients, then maybe that is possible.
I'll come to you, Katie.
Yeah, it's just following on from the question around, I guess, the will around implementation once we've done the service evaluation. Is this sort of a Cardiff and Vale initiative? Are there plans to look at a Wales rollout for this? And what are the sort of vehicles, you talked about speaking to the execs, which, I guess you start in Cardiff and Vale, do you? And then working at an all-Wales level from the off.
I think it touches on everybody talking to their network as well. So Jenny will talk to the clinical network. Procurement is all Wales anyway. Tom, you're already speaking to other health boards, aren't you?
Yeah, we have Halifax coming in next month as well to sort of look at this. So yeah, I think it's again, taking that.
You're already doing the tentative steps.
So we've tried to share it all the way along. So we've tried to do comms and to promote it so people know what's happening, so that it doesn't just suddenly come as a surprise. And trying to engage the wider network. But the clinicians are key, because if they look at this and go, don't like it, it's not happening. So it's engaging the right people right from the start, which is why Jenny set up service valuation in the hospital in London and in UHW, so the clinicians can come in, handle it, have a look, see what the site is like, and make sure that, they're going up to it.
Yeah. But you're right, I think it's important that we've identified in this area that there's a potential solution to that problem, which is widespread across Wales. And how do we then sort of roll it out? And whether that's investment that unlocks it further, whether it's I guess the team here sort of driving it forward and us as a company. But I think there's a big thing about how to roll out that sort of innovation and technology into the sort of wider space, so that everyone benefits from that. That's kind of duty of us all to go and do it.
And I was going to follow up, because we've come to the end of phase 3 in September, and that's when the money stops. And actually there's still that adoption piece. So I know this guy who works in CCR. And so I did exactly do that. We've got this far. It would be awful if this finished now, for everybody involved, because as you can tell, we're quite invested. And so I went to ask Owen to see if there was. So we've just been given another pot of money, 45k, so that we can use to try and unlock that adoption, which is, that's just brilliant, isn't it? So again, thank you, because we need that support. We're going to come to Katie because she's been waiting for ages.
I get more questions as it goes on. Only just a comment really, the National Endoscopy Programme, I don't know if you've already spoken to them, but they're worth engaging with if you're talking about it more nationally. Two questions from me. In terms of operators, is this the same situation as a normal endoscopy in terms of the operators and the training? That's just helpful to know. I suppose the other bit for me is, in terms of doing this in a clinic setting rather than an endoscopy setting, obviously there's a change in pathway piece as well as a new piece of kit. Is that something that has obviously been factored in, and has that caused you any more barriers? Has that been difficult, or has that sort of change in the pathway been?
So far, I think that's work in progress. So we're just coming to the adoption part. The idea to begin with is to use the clinic that's already running, so we can just invite more people to the clinic, so that you're not changing the pathway dramatically at the moment. But that will become part of the work that we do with CEDA, moving on to assess what that looks like. And we're still engaging the management team of industry to make sure that everybody's in the loop around that. Because you're right, it involves different people.
So there's just a different way of doing it, isn't it? So the practical things around
and follow up and evaluation. So the evaluation of this has got to be thorough, so that we get the right information out for service evaluation as well.
Thank you.
We've got one more question.
How does this impact staff? Because obviously we'll hear there's shortages of staff. By putting X number of extra procedures in, is that going to be a challenge, or is it the fact that you haven't actually got a full up endoscopy list now because you haven't got enough equipment? And if you intersperse a few disposables, that will make each list more efficient.
So actually this is taking these patients away from the endoscopy unit. So the endoscopy unit would run just the same as it is. The extra staff or the staff pressure would come from the clinic setting. But as Zoe said, our plan is to kind of roll it out with a clinic that is already running. And then further down the line, the thought would be that it would become its own clinic on its own. I think I'm a trainee surgeon, I'm still training. One of the biggest problems that trainees have is access to endoscopy. So it's known, especially from a surgical point of view, it is impossible to get in endoscopy to do any training. And the numbers that we have to get to become a consultant has just been raised, so that it's even harder. And actually clinics like this would be perfect for trainees. It gives you way more opportunities, and I don't think you'd have a staff problem because it just unlocks extra opportunities for trainees.
Okay. Thank you.
So thank you for listening. Hope you've enjoyed.
Yeah.